as a bunch of different letters before I did it.
Okay, so we are recording now for Pamela, who can't be with us tonight.
Hi, Pam. We love you.
Yeah, she knows.
Yeah.
So, why are you doing this to me? Share screen. There, go away. So, kind of wanted to show you what the day class came up with for their logos and stuff, because that's kind of fun.
That one's cool.
This one is a lot of fun.
It looks like it could be on like a school jersey.
Absolutely. It's very much that sort of a feel.
Yeah.
So that's Haley's, and Jill came up with a really it is busy, but it's way cool. And what we talked about in class was, you know, if we took out all this background stuff and just did the FJW, it would be amazing to put on a ring. And I kind of like the idea of that. Let's see, I guess I want to show a couple other little things here, and I have to do it this way, which I'm not supposed to do it this way, but that's okay.
Oh, that's cute.
Now, she did some great stuff with this, but there's a real problem with it. And I wanted you to see this because sooner or later this problem is going to bite one of you. And if I happen not to see it and you get knocked down for it on your grade, you need to say, hey, wait a minute, there's a problem. What happens is here inside of Canvas, sometimes things get screwed up. You look at this one and go, what's this weird ugly blob, and why are these not filled in? But if I go and take a look at what actually she did, that's a whole different thing. Because that's what she turned in. And you look at this and compare it to this, and you go, whoa, there's something wrong with this one. So should that happen to you, should something like this get turned in and I say, what's this ugly blob here and why is this not filled in? Then you say, did CrocDoc do it right? And it may happen to you, and I don't want it to anybody to get bit on something like that, but if you do, say, hey, and I'll fix it.
Yeah.
I love this one.
I love the little eye.
Uh-huh.
That's cute.
This one is just incredibly cute, which is a part of that assignment. And she did a great job of this one.
I love it.
Me too.
Actually, the eyes has us. And that one's really cool.
So just kind of let you know where you stand as opposed to the other class, because, hey, they're going to be your competition when you get out on the street. And so I want to share those, and I also want to show what you guys did, because there's some cool stuff there as well.
Please pick it up if you guys see something. I did two. I couldn't do the colors. Gallons, I think. Yeah, there's something wrong. Plus, I had a wild week. So. Oh, the background is, that's cool to make it like a water. That's cool. I like that.
That's very cool.
Background, so a bit more information.
My coloring didn't show up in the fourth annual.
Oh, there you go.
Fourth annual was colored.
So let's take a look and see what really happened and what it really looks like. All that's downloading.
Yes.
Nice logo.
Yes.
Clean, straightforward. And there it comes in, and down button, not up button. The backdrop on this is so amazing. It really shows some great stuff. What we're focusing on here really is the event, not the critter. But the critter is central to it. And that one came through very nicely. So, where were we? Right there. This one kind of reminds me of the
GE.
Playboy Club.
There we have it.
You could have done some really cool things. Because you could have turned it into a butterfly.
Oh my goodness, there you
Mhm.
have it. I don't relate with butterflies, I guess that's why I didn't
Yep.
think of it. But the background, the circle is the Zen circle.
Hmm.
And then I just erased a line on accident with the J and H, and it created that.
Uh-huh.
So that was my happy accident.
So the J and H really come through nicely.
Yeah.
And yeah, it does. The color does kind of look like GE.
Yes,
And it does kind of look like bunny ears.
yes. Yeah, I can see that too.
Hmm.
It's fun.
And hey,
Ah, my poster, I don't know if I. There's a different, I like the other one. The
Okay.
original.
so get the other one to me.
Okay.
That's cool because it's got that
And the colors are a little messed up too.
Mhm.
pop art. So it's-
Yeah, that's what I wanted to do. Like, because when you have like big events, like, I was thinking like, when you,
Should have done with like, in the book stuff.
that was like, I was kind of going for, because this new thing is like watercolor, like, and it's gonna be the summertime.
Yep.
So I wanted to like, I didn't want to be so literal with the dog, but I
Mhm.
wanted to use it. And then I wanted to put boys and please. I'll give you.
Okay. Pam did some fun stuff.
Yeah, I like the little heart with the top.
The heart with the paw is great.
I think that could be bigger and it'd be awesome.
Yeah, this could be
The
larger.
main.
Having the two dogs, it is a great dog portrait.
That is
I'm just curious to see what this one really looks like in PDF form. So here's another place where it's really interesting the way the letters came through with the PDF, and they didn't come through on this one.
Oh, yeah.
So PDF is kind of a strange beast sometimes.
Doesn't like to listen.
Doesn't necessarily like to listen, and it also has a tendency to load stuff in layers. In one of your future classes, you'll get to do a poster on your favorite graphic artist. And one of the guys did a poster on Steven Sagmeister, and Sagmeister is just this amazing German artist. He's done phenomenal stuff. He also likes to pose in the nude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so Albert did a real good job of taking his poster and putting the appropriate censored marks. And I called it up, and there he was in all of his glory. And I just about had nipped it, and then the censored mark showed up over the top of it. So, sometimes stuff happens. And you have to kind of roll with the punches when it does. But that's pretty cool. And Victor's isn't in yet, so
Yeah, give me a few minutes. I can give you a load of these.
those are on their way, and that's coming up. What I want to do tonight is share a couple of things from lynda.com and talk about the shape builder, because that's going to make your life a whole lot easier, and then the Pathfinder tools, which will make things amazing. So I'm just going to run a couple of videos tonight, and while those are going on, you can kind of half pay attention to them as you're working on your superhero.
So, superhero.
I'm so mad at the
You
superhero.
said we can take a picture and do it, or we can use original art.
You can use original art, but it's got to be vector.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay.
I have to look at
The one gal that was working on hers today was absolutely one of the most beautiful I've ever seen. She took it a totally different way. And the superhero was a nursing mom with a baby at the breast.
that is
Oh,
really cool.
absolutely.
That's a huge campaign.
I know it. And
She's so smart.
she's doing beautiful stuff on that one. So I'll share that one with you. Should be ready by Thursday night. So that one just,
I love it.
I looked at that one and it just about made me start to bawl
Right?
because
Like,
she done such a beautiful job with it.
get
Uh-huh.
bubbles and stuff.
Yeah. So the Shape Builder is an amazing tool that I think you're going to
All
love.
right, now that we've had our obligatory sojourn in a text, let's get back to what you're supposed to be doing in Illustrator, which is
Well, I'll
Illustrator.
go get some water.
Now, so far, everything we've drawn has been something Illustrator can make for us. In real life, I can't draw a perfect circle, but the robot that is Illustrator can. But let's say you don't want to draw a circle. In fact, you almost never want to draw a circle. You want to draw any old thing you like. In which case, good news, because in all but one of the following chapters, throughout the rest of this entire course, that's all we're going to do. Starting now. In this chapter, I'm going to show you how to take the things we've made so far, circles, lines, stars, whatever, and combine them into much more elaborate path outlines. That's a term, by the way. 2 words, 1 term, path outlines. That's what Adobe calls every line and shape that we create in Illustrator. Path outlines, or if you want to be casual, just plain paths. So for example, a straight line is a path, a circle is a path, and then we can combine them together to make even more awesome paths. Here, let me show you how to build any path you might imagine in Illustrator. In this movie, I'll show you the simplest way to build more complex paths inside Illustrator, and that's using the join command. And along the way, I'll show you how to create this linear spiral, or coil, if you prefer, and it's actually easier than drawing with a standard spiral tool. So assuming that you created that center guides template a few chapters back, go up to the File menu and choose New from Template, or press that keyboard shortcut, Control-Shift-N, or Command-Shift-N on the Mac, and then go ahead and
And I
locate
have a
your
Red
template
Bull.
and click on the New button in order
Get
to load
one.
it up. All right, now what you want to do is go to the Line tool here and select the Polar Grid tool from the flyout menu. And then I want you to position your cursor right there at the intersection of those 2 guides, and then press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and click. And by virtue of the fact that you have the Alt or Option key down, you'll create your shapes from the center outward. And by virtue of the fact that you clicked, you'll have brought up this dialog box. Now I just happen to know the size that I'm looking for, which is 616 points wide, as well as 616 points tall. And then we're looking for 25 concentric dividers. You want to make sure your skew value is 0%. And then go ahead and take the number of radial dividers down to 0 as well. And then click OK, and you'll end up with a bunch of concentric circles, as we're seeing here. Now, the Polar Grid tool always results in a group, as we can see over here on the far left side of the control panel. And that group is just going to get in our way. So go up to the Object menu and choose the Ungroup command to break all the circles apart. All right, now you want to make sure that your guides are locked down. So go up to the View menu, choose Guides, and then if the command does not have a check mark in front of it, as it doesn't in my case, go ahead and choose that command. All right, now you want to switch to the wide arrow tool, which of course you can get by pressing the A key, and then just go ahead and marquee all of the top points. And then go up to the Edit menu and choose the Cut command, or you can press Control X or Command X on the Mac. And that will go ahead and cut away the top halves of those circles. Now, return to the Edit menu and choose the Paste in Front command, or you can just press Control F or Command F on the Mac. And now what you want to do is drag this point right here over 1, just like that. That's as far as you go. And it'll just snap into alignment, as we've seen. And now you want to press Control A or Command A on the Mac to select everything. And then go up to the Object menu, choose Path, and choose Join. Or you can just press Control J or Command J on the Mac. And that will go ahead and join all these half circles into a single larger open path. All right, now go ahead and click off the paths to deselect them. And click on this little path right there. Do you see that right there? If you go ahead and press Control plus a bunch of times in order to zoom in, you'll see that we have this straight edge, center of the document. Go ahead and click on it with your white arrow, and then press the backspace key or the delete key on the Mac to get rid of it. And then go ahead and press Control 0 or Command 0 on the Mac to zoom back out. Now I'm going to take the line weight up to, let's say, 6 points, just so we can better see what we're doing. And I'm going to click on the word stroke and select the round cap so that we have round caps at either end of our spirals. And I say spirals because we actually do have 2. I'm going to go ahead and press the D key to switch to my black arrow tool, and I'll click off the paths to deselect them, and then I'll click on this guy right there to select it. And I'll change the color of that stroke to, let's say, blue, so that we can see that we've actually ended up with 2 spirals. I just want one, so I'm going to click on that blue spiral again and press the backspace key or the delete key on the Mac to get rid of it. All right, now let's dress up our spiral by adding a few strokes. I'll go ahead and click on it to select it, and then I'll go up to the line weight option and raise it to 20 points for starters. And then I'll go to the window menu and choose the appearance command to bring up the appearance panel, and I'll drop down to the add new stroke icon in the lower left corner of the panel, and I'll click on it to add a new stroke. And I'm going to change the line weight this time to 10 points, and I'm going to click on it swatch, and then I'm going to select this shade of red right here, which is R237 G28 B36, in order to add this nice bright red stroke. And now, with that stroke selected, there inside the appearance panel, go up to the effect menu, choose distort and transform, and then choose the transform command. And then I'm going to change both of my move values to -2, like so, and then turn on the preview checkbox, and you can see that that stroke moves up and to the left, at which point I'll go ahead and click OK. All right, now let's make a copy of that stroke by clicking on it, the red stroke that is, and then you want to click on the little page icon at the bottom of the appearance panel. And this time we're going to take the line weight down to 6 points, and I'm going to change the color of the stroke to this shade of orange right there, R241 G90 B36. And then I'll twirl the stroke open by clicking on this little twirly triangle. And I'll click on the word transform, and I will take both these values down to -3 this time around. And as soon as I click OK, you can see the stroke move just a little bit up and to the left. And then I'll go ahead and click on this stroke, click on the page icon at the bottom of the panel to make another copy of it, change its color this time to this kind of yellowish orange, which is R247 G147 B30. And then I'll take the line weight down to 2 points this time around. I'll click on the word transform, and I will take both of these values down to -4 points and click OK, at which point we now have all the strokes we need. All right, now I'm going to zoom out a little bit by pressing Control- or Command- on the Mac. And I'm going to get the rectangle tool from the Shape Tool flyout menu, and I'll go ahead and draw from one corner of that lead guide to the other, like so. And then I'm going to get rid of the stroke for this shape. And now I'll go ahead and change the fill to this second to darkest shade of gray, which is all values at 26. And now I'll go ahead and press the Escape key to dismiss that panel, and I'll right-click inside of that shape, choose the range, and then choose Send to Back in order to send it to the back of that spiral. Then I'm going to switch back over here to the Layers panel. I'm going to turn off that Guides layer. I'm going to press the V key in order to switch back to my black arrow tool. I'll click off the shape to deselect it, and then I'll go ahead and zoom back in. And that's how you create a linear spiral that in our case looks like a hot burner, using a combination of the Polar Grid tool along with the Join command. In this movie, I'll show you another way to join open path outlines in Illustrator, and that's to use the Join tool. And along the way, we're going to take this collection of straight lines that I drew using the standard line segment tool, and we're going to turn them into this white arrow. Now, the thing about the Join command is that it typically works best when all of the endpoints line up with each other, as was the case with the spiral in the previous movie. So here, for example, we have a bunch of half circles up here at the top of the document, whose endpoints exactly align with the circles at the bottom of the document. But that's not the case with these straight lines. And so anytime that the endpoints don't exactly align with each other, then the Join command is going to connect them with straight segments. And to demonstrate what that looks like, I'll just go ahead and press Control-A, Command-A on the Mac in order to select everything inside this document. And then I'll go up to the Object menu, choose Path, and then choose Join. And you can see that we now have these little straight segments between what were formerly endpoints, which of course is not what we want. So if you run into a scenario like that, your better option is to use the Join tool. So I'll go ahead and press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac to undo the Join command. And then I'll click and hold on the Pencil tool midway down the toolbox. Or if you're working in the most recent version of Illustrator, you may need to click and hold on the Shaper tool instead. Either way, you can select the Join tool from the bottom of this flyout menu. And now notice, if I just go ahead and drag over these segments right there, that will go ahead and get rid of them and fuse that area right there into a single path out. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and drag across these 2 points that don't even overlap each other. Notice that, but they're sufficiently close that Illustrator figures out exactly what to do. All right, now I'll press Control-A or Command-A on the Mac again to select my remaining path outlines. And I'll just go ahead and drag over the top of the arrow. And once again, it works out beautifully. And now I just want to select the top of the arrow, not its stem. So in other words, I need to deselect what's selected and select what's not selected. And if you ever run into that situation, all you have to do is go up to the select menu and choose inverse. And that will go ahead and reverse the selection. All right, now I'm going to drag over this area right there to fuse it, and we end up with an arrowhead. The next step is to press the V key to switch back to the black arrow tool and click on this stem right there. And then I want you to change the line weight to 60 points so that we have a nice thick stroke. And now we want to convert that stroke to a path outline. And you do that by going to the object menu, back down to the path submenu, and you choose this guy right here, outline stroke, which will draw a path outline around that stroke. And now if you press Shift X in order to swap the fill and stroke attributes, then you'll end up with this black stroke and no fill. After which point, I'll take the line weight value back up to 4 points. All right, now you want to press the A key in order to switch to the white arrow tool, and then click off the path to deselect it. And then just click on its top segment right there to select it independently of the anchor points, and press the backspace key or the delete key on the Mac to get rid of it. Now I want you to click on this point right there, and we want to cut the path at that location by going up to this little scissors icon up here in the control panel and clicking on it. And now we have 2 anchor points at that location, which I can confirm by clicking off them and then dragging one around like so. All right, I don't want it up there though, so I'll press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac to undo that change. And I'll press Control-A or Command-A on the Mac in order to select all my path outlines. And now I'll switch back to my join tool right there, and I'll just go ahead and drag over those guys. I can drag over these guys in order to finish off the project. So you never know. Sometimes you need to select the path outlines, other times you don't. All right, now I'm going to press the V key in order to switch back to the black arrow tool, and I'll select my fused arrow, and I'll go ahead and take the line weight up to 10 points like so, and then I'll click off the path outline in order to deselect it. And that's how you use the join tool, to join a bunch of open paths that are not aligned with each other in order to create a custom shape here inside Illustrator. In this movie, I'll show you how to use the Shape Builder tool, which allows you to take basic lines and shapes, and I do everything, by the way, that we're seeing here, using either one of the line tools or one of the shape tools that we've seen in previous chapters. So for example, this guy right here is a star. I drew this equilateral triangle using the polygon tool. We've got a ton of circles and ellipses. There's a rectangle in the background right there, and so forth. And what we're going to do is we're going to add them or subtract them from each other to create the more complex custom path outlines that you see here. All right, so I'll go ahead and switch over to my starter file. And you get to the Shape Builder tool in the lower section of the toolbox, as we're seeing right here. If you don't see it, then click and hold on one of these Live Paint tools and select the Shape Builder from the flyout menu. And then, just to make sure that we're on the same page, I want you to press the Enter key to bring up the Shape Builder Options dialog box. And I want you to click on the Reset button just to reset all the settings so that you and I are getting the same results. And then change this Pick Color From option to Artwork. We'll see how color swatches work later. But for now, I want you to lift the colors from the art, at which point you can go ahead and click OK in order to accept that change. All right, let's say I want to join the star and the skinny rectangle right here into a magic wand. Then you want to press and hold the Control key or the Command key on the Mac to temporarily gain access to your last used arrow tool, which I'm assuming is the black arrow, and then just go ahead and partially marquee those two shapes. And the reason is that you have to select the shapes before you can merge them. And then I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here so I can really see what I'm doing. And I'm going to drag up this rectangle, and you want to drag all the way into the star, incidentally. And that's because Illustrator's only going to merge the stuff that's covered in that dot pattern. At which point, go ahead and release in order to merge those two shapes into one. All right, now let's check out the snowman over here. Once again, we need to select him. So press and hold that Control key or the Command key on the Mac to temporarily gain access to the black arrow tool. And just marquee down the left side of these shapes. That'll select the arm as well, but not terribly concerned about that. Then release the Control key or the Command key to return to the Shape Builder tool. And now notice I can drag over these buttons and over his eyes and nose and all this stuff, but those items are not going to get merged because they're not selected. And so all you need to make sure is that you don't drag over that arm. And then release, and you'll see that you've merged those three ellipses into one single lumpy snowman. All right, now let's take a look at the shoes down here. I'll go ahead and press the Control key or the Command key on the Mac and partially marquee those guys. And notice we have red rectangles, and then I have this arc that I drew with the arc tool and this straight line that I drew with the line tool, and then I just went ahead and joined those two shapes together using the join command. So in other words, this is an open path outline. There is no segment on the right-hand side here, but it's got a fill, and so that's all the shape builder needs. So notice if I drag from the yellow path to the red one, then I'm going to color the new path yellow. Whereas if I drag from the red path to the yellow one, I'm going to color the new path red. And so you have that kind of control when you're working with the shape builder. All right, now I'm going to zoom in on this circle and this line right here. So I'll go ahead and press the Control key, that's the Command key on the Mac, and click this pointing line. And all it is, by the way, is two lines that I drew with the line tool and then join together. So this is another open filled path. And then I'll Control Shift click or Command Shift click on that circle right there. And now I'll go ahead and drag across them and make sure to drag over both halves of the circle. So in other words, the Shape Builder tool sees every single path intersection. At which point, go ahead and release in order to create that caret nose. All right, now I'm going to scroll over to these two circles right here. Let's say what I want to do is subtract the brown circle from the yellow one in order to create a crescent. In that case, I would press the Control key or the Command key on the Mac and marquee the two shapes like so. And I want you to see that the shape in the background is a big circle. And now notice, if I move my cursor out here, that the Shape Builder tool appears as a black arrowhead along with a plus sign to show you that it's going to add shapes. If you press and hold the Alt key or the Option key on a Mac, that plus sign is going to change to a minus sign, at which point you can go ahead and drag inside the shapes that you want to subtract. You don't want to drag into the big yellow shape because then you'll just subtract everything. So I'll go ahead and press Control Z or Command Z on the Mac to undo that change. And I'll just go ahead and Alt or Option drag over both parts of the brown circle in order to create this crescent. All right, so those are the basics of adding and subtracting shapes using the Shape Builder tool. In the next movie, I'll show you how to get still better results. All right, so far we've seen how to add and subtract shapes using the Shape Builder tool. In this movie, I'll show you how to divide shapes into pieces, and I'll also show you how you can marquee shapes by pressing the Shift key. All right, I'll go ahead and switch over to this version of the document. And notice I switch back to the black arrow tool up here at the top of the toolbox, at which point I'm going to marquee the three shapes that are going to make up our A. So we have two triangles drawn once again using the polygon tool, and then this rectangle. All right, now I'll go ahead and select the Shape Builder tool. And notice that in addition to dragging, and you can do freeform drags these days, you can also just click with the tool. So I'm going to press Control Z or Command Z on the Mac to undo that change. And I'm just going to click in this intersection right there. And that's going to divide the shapes into a bunch of pieces. And let me show you what that looks like. I'll go ahead and switch back to my black arrow tool. I'll click off the shapes to deselect them. And I'll start moving these guys out here like so. And so you can see that everything's broken apart. And I've even managed to cut a hole in the rearmost triangle. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and undo those moves. And then with this path right there selected, I'm going to shift click on this one and just press the backspace key or the delete key on the Mac to get rid of them. All right, now I'll go ahead and marquee these shapes once again, and then I'll switch back to my Shape Builder tool, and then I'll just go ahead and drag across that bar there so that I'm connecting the bar to the big upside down V in order to make an A. And then I'll just go ahead and drag across this area to unite it as well. And then I'll subtract each of these shapes here, not by Alt or Option dragging, but rather just by Alt clicking or Option clicking on the Mac. And we end up with this letter A. All right, now what's great about this is we can now use it to add some depth to the letters. So in other words, we're going to give it some vertical size by pressing the V key to switch back to the black arrow tool. And then I'll just drag this top point down while pressing the Shift key until I move it down about this far. Now I'll press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and release in order to create a duplicate. All right, now I'm just going to go ahead and right-click on this shape, choose Arrange, and choose Send to Back so that it's in back of the original A. And I'll change its color by clicking on the first swatch up here in the control panel and selecting this dark blue, which is R46, G49, B146. Looks like that. All right, now I want to add some edges by first selecting the Line Segment tool from the Line Tool flyout menu. And then I'll drag from here down to here, like so. And because my smart guides are turned on, everything's snapping into place. And Then I'll go ahead and select the rectangle tool, and I will draw a rectangle right here. And it's going to come in with no fill, so I'll go ahead and click on its fill swatch, and I will choose that dark shade of blue once again. And now I'll draw another rectangle here and another one down here in the bottom right corner. All right, now I'll switch back to my black arrow tool, which of course I can get by pressing the V key. I'll go ahead and marquee all of those shapes, partially marquee them, without running into the snowman, that is. And now I'll switch back to my shape builder tool again, and I want you to see that this line right there serves as a definition. So I could click right there to divide that shape out and click again right there to divide it. And now I'll click at this location and this one right here. And that's it. All right, so now I'm going to press the V key to switch back to my black arrow tool. And notice this shape right there that kind of goes in the background. I'm going to marquee these two shapes. So the forward part of that A and that bit of A in the background. And then I'm going to shift click on the foreground A to deselect it. And I'm going to right click on this object, choose arrange, and choose bring to front so that we can see it. And it ends up looking like this, which is not something we need. So I'm just going to press the backspace key or the delete key on the Mac to get rid of it. And then I'll just go ahead and click and shift click on these two halves of the inner portion of the A. And I'll change the color from light blue back to the dark blue. And I want you to see something. Notice how we've got some bad edges right there. We've got these miter joints that are not aligning with each other. It's worse right here, but it's bad up here too, in the upper right corner. To get rid of those, just go ahead and zoom out a little bit, marquee all those shapes that make up the A again, at least partially marquee them. And then go up to the stroke option here in the control panel and change the corner setting to round join. And now we'll go ahead and get rid of those miters as we're seeing right here. And now if I click off the shapes, you can see that everything aligns nicely. All right, now I'm going to press Control-0 or Command-0 on the Mac to zoom back out. All right, now let's finish things off by making this clover. I'll go ahead and click on one of the green circles and shift click on the other two with my black arrow tool. And then once again, I'll grab the shape builder tool. And you could just drag all over these circles if you want to, but it's possible you might miss an element like that thing right there. So the better way to work, I'll go ahead and undo that change, is to press and hold the shift key, at which point, instead of dragging a freeform line, you'll draw a rectangular marquee instead, at which point you can go ahead and partially marquee all three of those shapes, and then when you release, notice that the interior gets filled as well. Now that trick also works when subtracting shapes. So what I'm going to do is press the Control key or the Command key on the Mac in order to get my black arrow tool on the fly. I'll go ahead and partially marquee these sort of beige shapes down here. And I'll press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac so I see my subtract cursor. And then I'll add the Shift key so I can marquee these shapes instead. And then I'll go ahead and Shift Alt or Shift Option drag over on this side as well so that we're left with just that stem. And then I'm going to press the Control key or the Command key on the Mac to get my black arrow tool along with the Shift key. So you want to Control Shift click on the green portion of the clover. That's a Command Shift click on the Mac. And then just go ahead and press the Shift key and marquee around those shapes like so in order to join them all together. And now I'll go ahead and press the V key in order to switch to my black arrow tool, and I'll click off the shape to deselect it. And that's how you divide shape intersections, just by clicking on them, as well as draw rectangular marquees by pressing the Shift key. All right, now let's try our hands at a real-world project in the form of the Sheriff's Badge, which may look a little bit complicated, but it's actually quite doable. And it's made exclusively of this star, along with a bunch of circles and a big ellipse. All right, so the first thing we want to do is bring up our center guide template by going up to the File menu and choosing the New for Template command, or you can press Control-Shift-N or Command-Shift-N on the Mac, and then locate your template file and click the New button in order to make a new document. All right, now I want to lay down a couple more guides here. So I'm going to click on the Guides layer here inside the Layers panel, and I'll press Control-R, Command-R on a Mac in order to bring up the rulers. And then I'll drag out a horizontal guide like so. Now I'm going to press Control-R or Command-R on a Mac to get rid of the rulers. And I'll go up to the View menu, choose Guides, and then choose the Lock Guides command to unlock the guide. And I'll go ahead and marquee it like so. And then you want to bring up the Transform panel, or if you can already see the Y value in the Control panel, don't worry about it. In either event, just go ahead and change the Y value here to 50 and press the Tab key. And that will move the guide. to 50 points below the top of the artboard. All right, now click in that Y value again, and this time click in front of it and enter 672, which is the height of the artboard, minus 50. And then instead of pressing the enter key, press Alt Enter here on the PC or Option Return on the Mac. And that'll go ahead and make a copy of that guide that you're seeing there. Then go ahead and click off the guide, go to the View menu, choose Guides, and choose Lock Guides to once again lock them down. All right, now I'm going to create a new layer by pressing the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and clicking on a little page icon at the bottom of the Layers panel. A color of green is just fine, but I'm going to call this guy Background, let's say, and then click OK. And now I'm going to zoom out a little bit by pressing Control minus or Command minus on the Mac, and I'm going to select the Rectangle tool, and I'm going to drag from one bleed corner to the other of that red bleed boundary in order to create this gigantic rectangle. And it comes up with no stroke or no fill in my case. Having no stroke is just fine. And I'm going to change the fill to this shade of green right here, the dark one, which is R0G104B55, in order to create this big green rectangle like so. And then I'm going to click in this lock column in order to lock the background. All right, now I'll go ahead and zoom in, and I'm going to rename this drawing layer Shapes, because it's going to contain the main shapes that we're going to reference multiple times inside this project. And now I'll just press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac to accept that name. And I will click and hold on the Shape tool in order to bring up the Shape tool flyout menu. And I will go ahead and select the Star tool. And I'm going to drag from the intersection of these two guides downward, like so. And notice that we currently have a 5-pointed star. I want a 6-pointed star, so I'll press the up arrow once. And then I'll drag down until I snap to that guide at the bottom of the screen. And before I release, I'll press and hold the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac so that all the sides align with each other. And then I'll go ahead and release the mouse button and then release the Alt or Option key to create that new shape. All right, I want it to have a brown stroke. So I'll go ahead and set the stroke up here in the control panel. And I want the line weight to be 4 points. And I also want to set the interior color of the star to something other than green. But the swatch I'm looking for is not here by default. What you have to do is click on that little libraries icon in the bottom left corner of the swatches panel, and then choose metal. And that'll bring up a bunch of groups of colors, as we're seeing right here. Make the panel nice and big so that we can see this guy right here, Brass 2. You want to drag that entire folder and drop it into the swatches panel. And then click off those swatches to deselect them, and you can close the free-floating metal panel. And then, assuming your fill is active, go ahead and select this third swatch, C=0, M19, Y54, K8, in order to fill the star like so. All right, now we want to make a bunch of circles at the tips, and so I'm going to click and hold on the Star tool to once again bring up the Shape tool flyout menu, and I'll select the Ellipse tool, and then I'm going to Alt-click or Option-click up here at the top in order to bring up the Ellipse dialog box. And notice that the width and height values are the same. I want them to remain the same, so I'm going to turn on this link icon right there, and I'm going to change the width value to 40 points. That changes the height value to 40 points as well, at which point I'll go ahead and click OK in order to create that circle. All right, now I'm going to grab the black arrow tool. Now you may know that there's a way to basically rotate these circles around the badge. I don't want to do that though, because that'll end up creating problems later. So I'm just going to duplicate this circle by dragging its center point until it snaps into alignment with the star point, at which point I'll press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac in order to create a duplicate. And then I'll do the same over here. So I'm constantly dragging by the center point. And now that I've got these two circles right next to each other, I'll shift click on this guy and drag it down so that I'm duplicating both of those circles. And again, I want to make sure that I'm snapping into alignment. So I want to see a double white arrowhead, at which point I'll go ahead and release. And then I'm going to duplicate this guy up here at the top, down here at the bottom, and I'll again press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and make sure that I'm snapping into alignment like so. And now click off the circle to deselect it. And now I'm going to press Control A or Command A on the Mac to select all of those shapes. And I'll go up to the window menu and choose Appearance to bring up the Appearance panel. And I want this stroke to be in back of the fill, so I'm just going to go ahead and drag it and drop it in back of the fill like so. And then I'll click off the shapes to deselect them. All right, that takes care of our base shapes. In the next movie, we'll merge them together using the Shape Builder tool. In this movie, we're going to do some actual shape building. Now, the thing about the Shape Builder tool is that it does permanently modify your path outlines. And you never know when you're creating something like this, whether you're going to want to come back to your original paths or not. So it's always a good idea to duplicate them. By going back to the Layers panel, you can see I have it back up on screen. And then clicking on the flyout menu icon and choosing the Duplicate Shapes command. And then I'm going to turn off the original Shapes layer. I'm going to double click on an empty portion of this layer. And I'm going to call this guy Main Star. And I'll change the color to medium blue, let's say. And then click OK. All right, now you just want to select everything by pressing Control A or Command A on the Mac. And then go ahead and grab that Shape Builder tool. And press the Shift key and just marquee everything like so in order to merge it all together. All right, now I want to create the reflections inside the star. And so I'm going to again duplicate this layer by clicking on that flyout menu icon and choosing Duplicate Main Star. And I'm going to double click an empty portion of the layer to bring up the Layer Options dialog box. I'll go ahead and call this layer Inset because we're going to eventually inset the star, as you'll see. And I'll change the color to, let's say, violet, just so it stands out. And I'll click OK. All right, I no longer want the stroke, but changing the stroke at this point isn't going to make any difference. Notice if I change the stroke from brown to white, we're not actually seeing it change. And that's because we're working with the Shape Builder tool. And so the easiest way to really change that stroke is to press the V key to switch back to the black arrow tool, at which point you'll see that the stroke is still brown. And I can now change it to white just for the sake of demonstration, but I really don't want it, so I'm going to change it to none. All right, now we want to draw a really big ellipse. So I'm going to click on the Shapes layer to make it active and turn it back on as well. And then I'm going to zoom out from my artwork. And I'm going to get the ellipse tool. And as opposed to dragging with it, I'm just going to click. And I'm going to turn off the link. And I'm going to change the width value to 900 points. And I'll take the height value up to 500 points and click OK in order to create this gigantic shape right here. And then I'll go ahead and drag it up to about this location here. So notice that it's higher than the center over here on the left-hand side, and it's lower than the center on the right-hand side. Something along those lines. Of course, you can go your own way if you want to. And then I'll just go ahead and zoom back in. I'm going to make a copy of this shape on the inset layer by Alt or Option dragging that little square, which indicates the selection. And because I Alt or Option dragged it, I made a copy of it, after which point I'll just go ahead and hide the shapes layer once again. All right, now let's go ahead and merge these shapes together by shift-clicking on that star. And then I'm going to once again grab the Shape Builder tool. And I'll just divide things by clicking on this top portion, and then clicking again on this bottom area, and then Alt or Option clicking on the ellipse outside of the star because we don't need it. And then I'll switch back to the black arrow tool by pressing the V key, and I'll go ahead and click off the shapes to deselect them. And then I'll click on this top shape to select it. And then I'll click on the first swatch up here in the control panel to change the fill. And I'll set it to this final color in the group, which is C1, M8, Y32, K5, in order to produce this effect here. All right, now we need to create an inset reflection. And so I need to go back and get the main star once again by clicking in the corner, the upper right corner of the main star layer. That'll go ahead and select the contents of that layer, which is just that one shape. And then I'll Alt drag or Option drag it up the stack like so to make a copy of it. And now I'll go back to my shapes layer down here, turn it on, click on the big ellipse, Alt or Option drag its square up to the inset layer, turn that shapes layer off again. And then I need to click on the big star to select it. And we want to inset it. We want to move all of its points inward so that the shape becomes smaller. And you do that by going up to the Object menu, choosing Path, and then choosing Offset Path. And normally you're offsetting the path outward like so. And you can see what that means by turning on the preview checkbox. That's not what we want though. We want to take it inward. So enter a value of -3 and then click the OK button in order to accept that change. And that leaves a copy behind right there, incidentally. So you want to get rid of that copy by selecting it and then pressing the backspace key or the delete key on the Mac. And then you want to select the inset path, get rid of its stroke once again by changing that stroke to none. And then click on the big ellipse. And I want to change the color of both of these shapes to the darkest of the brass colors, which is C21, M49, Y100, K7. And then we're going to switch back to the Shape Builder tool again and click on this top shape, click on this one as well, and then Alt or Option click on the portion of the ellipse we no longer want. All right, now I'm going to switch to the black arrow tool once again. Click off the paths to deselect them, and click on this guy to select it. Now, generally, you probably want to fill the shape with a gradient, but we're not going to get to the gradient tool until the advanced course. So for now, just go up to the Effect menu, choose Stylize, and choose Inner Glow. And here's the settings I came up with. So the first thing you want to do is click on the color swatch right there, and then click on the color swatches button, and then navigate your way down to the browns, which are pretty low in the list, as you can see here. The one we want is R96 G56 B19, which is the second to darkest brown. Then click OK. You want to change the mode to multiply so that you're darkening the star with this color. An opacity value of 33% works really nicely, and I crank the blur value up to 50 points. And if you want to see what that looks like, just go ahead and turn on the preview checkbox, and you'll see that soft darkening effect right there. At which point you can go ahead and click OK in order to accept that change, and then just go ahead and click off the path outlines to deselect them. And now if you zoom in over here, you can see that this reflection carries on past the inset to those original objects below. All right, and so that's it. I'm going to go ahead and press Control-0 or Command-0 on the Mac to zoom out. And that's at least one way to use the Shape Builder tool to create an inset reflection here inside Illustrator. In this movie, we're going to add a giant circle around the star, and we're also going to color in each one of these circles at the star's point. And along the way, I'll show you a different way to color shapes using the Shape Builder tool. And so I'll go ahead and switch over to my document so far, and I'm going to draw a couple of circles here. And I'm going to press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and click at the intersection of those two center guides to bring up the ellipse dialog box. And I'm going to change each one of these values, the width and height values, to 600 points and click OK. That goes ahead and creates a circle from the center outward. And then I'll Alt or Option click again in order to revisit the ellipse dialog box. I'm going to turn on the length this time around because the values are the same, and I'll change the width value to 550, and that'll change the height value as well. And then click OK. All right, and now let's go ahead and join these shapes together by first switching to the black arrow tool, which of course you can get by pressing the V key. And then I'll shift on the outside circle, and I'll go ahead and select the Shape Builder tool. And then I want you to press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac to bring up the Shape Builder Options dialog box. And let's change Pick Color From to Color Swatches, like so, and then turn on the Cursor Swatch Preview. And next, click OK. And you will see a little preview of your color swatches above your cursor. At which point, you want to press the right arrow key a bunch of times until you come up with that light shade of orange right there. And you also see it highlighted inside the swatches panel. It's R251, G176, B59. And now what you want to do is just click in this ring right there, and that will divide it off and color it as well. And then press the Alt key, the Option key on the Mac, and click inside the circle in order to get rid of that area. And now, just go ahead and press the V key to switch back to the black arrow tool. The shape should be selected, in which case, go ahead and drag it down to the main star layer, like so, here inside the Layers panel. And then right-click on it, choose Arrange, and choose Send to Back in order to send it in back of that star. And now you want to switch to the Appearance panel, which in my case is right next door to the Layers panel. So I'll go ahead and click on it. And I'm going to change the stroke color to that dark brown once again, R66 G33 B11. I'll go ahead and change the line weight to 4 points, and I'll drag the stroke below the fill like so in order to produce this effect. All right, now let's add a dotted border by once again getting the ellipse tool. And I'm going to again Alt-click or Option-click at the intersection of those two guides. And this time, I'm going to set the width value to 575. Two values are still linked, so that changes the height value as well. I'll go ahead and click OK in order to accept that change. And I'm going to get rid of the fill up here in the control panel by clicking on that first swatch and changing it to none. And then I'm going to change the color of the stroke to this brightest brass color, which is C0M5Y15K4. And I'll increase the line weight value to 16 points like so. And again, we need to move this guy back. So this time I'm just going to press Control X or Command X on the Mac to cut the shape. And then I'll press the V key to switch to the black arrow tool. And I'll click on that ring right there and press Control F or Command F on the Mac in order to paste the new shape directly in front of it. All right, I'm looking for a dotted stroke this time, and I want a total of 36 dots around the entire circumference of this circle. So I once again went to the circumference calculator, and I dialed in half of our diameter, which is 287.5, incidentally. Just figured that out on the calculator. And as soon as I click calculate, I get this big value right here. I'm just going to select everything up to the first 3 decimals deep and press Control-C or Command-C on the Mac to copy that value. And then I'll go back to Illustrator, click on the word stroke, go ahead and turn on your round caps, and then click on the dash line checkbox. You want the dash to be 0 points, and then you want the gap to be that value you just copied, divided, so /36, and then press the tab key, and that gives us a gap value of 50.178. And it's okay to leave this preserve icon turned on. After which point, just press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac. Then go over here to the Appearance panel, click on that stroke to make it active, and click on the little page icon at the bottom of the panel to make a copy of it. And then change the color to this guy, C0M19, Y54K8, in order to darken things up. And now go ahead and reduce the line weight value to just 12 points, like so. All right, now I want you to add a drop shadow to these elements so that you can gain access to this main star layer. Click in its upper right corner in order to select all 3 of the shapes on that layer. And then I want you to go up to the Effect menu, choose Stylize, and choose Drop Shadow. After which point you can enter these values right here. So we've got an opacity of 75%, the X offset is -5, both the Y offset and the blur are +5. If you want to see what that looks like, turn on the preview checkbox and you'll end up with this result right here. After which point you can click OK in order to apply that drop shadow, and then click off the shapes to deselect them. And that's how you create the big circle and ornaments around the star, as well as how you modify the color of the shape as you're creating it using the Shape Builder tool. In this movie, we're going to create these sculpted circles at each one of the 6 points of the star. And this is largely a function of assigning multiple variable width strokes. And so I'll go ahead and switch over to my star in progress. I'm going to turn off the main star and inset layers for a moment, and then click on the shapes layer to make it active. And I want to go ahead and select this circle right there. And then I'll press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and drag that colored square up to the inset layer in order to make a copy of it. And then I'll turn off the shapes layer and turn the other 2 layers back on. All right, now I'm going to zoom in on this circle quite a bit here. Now, the thing about a circle is that it begins here on its right-hand point. And that means if we're going to assign a variable with stroke, we've got to have a width point right there, which is not what I want. That'll make a mess of everything. So I need to rotate this beginning point in the circle upward to the top of the shape. And you can do that by clicking on the word transform up here in the control panel, and then make sure the center point is selected in the reference point matrix and change this rotate value to 90 degrees. Press the Enter key, the Return key on the Mac. It will not look any different, but it will behave differently. All right, now go up to the first color swatch up here in the control panel and change the fill color to the darkest brass, which is C21, M49, Y100, K7. And then let's go ahead and change the stroke color to this last guy, C1, M8, Y32, K5. And now what I want you to do is increase the line weight value to 15, like so. All right, now go ahead and get the width tool, which, as you may recall, has a keyboard shortcut of Shift-W. And go ahead and double-click on this top anchor point there to bring up the width point edit dialog box. Change the first size value to 0 and change the second size value to 15. And then click OK. And notice we cannot delete this point because this is the point at which the shape starts. So now just go ahead and click OK. The reason we're not seeing anything is because the fill's in front of the stroke. So go to the Appearance panel and just drag the stroke up to in front of the fill, like so. All right, now what you want to do is double click on this bottom point and go ahead and change the size 1 value to 0 and change the size 2 value to 1, and then click OK in order to accept that change. All right, now we want to reduce the opacity of this stroke. So you want to click on the actual stroke itself. And notice, I want you to see something. When we're seeing this asterisk after the line weight value, that's telling us that we have a variable weight stroke. I just want you to notice that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click on that stroke. Twirl it open as well by clicking on this little triangle, and then click on the word opacity. And I want you to take this opacity value down to 25% and press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac. so that we have this translucent stroke. All right, now we're going to build it up by selecting the stroke once again and then clicking on a little page icon at the bottom of the panel. And now you want to reduce the line weight to 10. You don't have to do anything about the variable width. It's all fine. Then click on the word opacity and take it up to 50% this time. And now let's make another copy by clicking on the 10-point stroke, clicking on a little page icon at the bottom of the panel, reducing the line weight to 5 points. This time I'm going to click on the word opacity right there, and then click on the trash can at the bottom of the appearance panel in order to restore an opacity of 100%. All right, now I'm going to zoom out so that I can take in the entire illustration, and I have to once again duplicate this circle. So you might have figured it would have been a better idea to bring over all 6 circles and modify them all at the same time, but in my experience, it doesn't really work. Things get all messed up. So we're just going to duplicate this guy again by pressing the V key to switch back to the black arrow tool. Go to your layers panel and turn on the shapes layer just so that we have something to snap into alignment with. And then go ahead and drag this guy by its center point until it snaps into position right there. Do it again over to this position. And by the way, I'm pressing the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac in order to make a duplicate of these circles. Shift click on that guy and then drag him down while pressing the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac. And then finally grab this top guy again and drag him down by a center point while pressing the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac in order to make that final copy. And then I'll go ahead and turn off the shapes layer so that we can take in our artwork. And that's how you create a kind of sculptural effect by layering multiple variable width strokes here inside Illustrator. In this movie, we're going to add the text on the badge right here, as well as these bars above and below the word sheriff. And that's going to require some additional path building. So I'll go ahead and switch over to my illustration so far. And I'm going to turn off the inset and main star layers and turn the shapes layer on so I can draw the rectangles that will ultimately turn into the bars. And so I'll go ahead and select the rectangle tool from the shape tool flyout menu. And then I need to make sure that the shapes layer is active in order to draw on it. And I'll go ahead and position my cursor at the intersection of those 2 center guides. And I'll press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and click in order to bring up the rectangle dialog box. And these are the values I'm looking for: a width of 340 points and a height of 170 points. After which point I'll go ahead and click OK. And now I'm going to Alt or Option click again in order to revisit the rectangle dialog box. And I'm going to change the width value to 444, and I'll set the height value to 150 points. And the reason we're doing this, by the way, I just happen to know these values in advance because I've played around with this file. But what we want to do is subtract this inner rectangle from the outer one in order to create the bars. And because we're creating those shapes from the center out, our bars will be exactly centered as well. All right, now press the V key to switch to the black arrow tool and shift click on that other rectangle to select it. And now go to the layers panel and notice that we have a little square representing the selection. I want to put these objects on a new layer, so I'm going to click on the inset layer to make it active. And then I'll Alt click or Option click on the little page icon at the bottom of the layers panel. And I'm going to go ahead and call this new layer text, and I'll change the color to, let's say, gold, and click OK. And now I will Alt drag or Option drag that red square all the way up to the text layer in order to create a duplicate of these shapes. And then I'll turn off the shapes layer, and I'll go ahead and turn the inset and main star layers back on. All right, now I want to subtract the forward rectangle from the rear one by once again grabbing the shape builder tool. And notice I can see my swatches still, so I'm going to advance to the black swatch, like so. And you can also just select it up here in the swatches panel if you want. And then click in this top bar to make it black, click in the bottom bar to make it black, and then Alt drag or Option drag all the way through the central rectangle in order to subtract that shape away. All right, now let's create the text. And I'm going to do that by grabbing my type tool. And I'll go ahead and click right there at that center guide. And the font I'm looking for, it may not be installed on your system, but it's called Birch. And then I'll just go ahead and tab over to the type size value and take it up to 140 points. And I'll enter the word sheriff, which has 1 R and 2 Fs. And then I'll click on the align center icon next to the word paragraph. And I'll press the escape key to create that text. And I'll also click on the word character up here in the control panel. And I'll click this icon right there, all caps, in order to turn the text into all caps like so. All All right, now you might figure we could align this text vertically to our artboard by clicking in a word align over here on the far right side of the control panel. Go ahead and make sure that it's set to align to artboard. And then we could center align the text. It needed a little bit of that. And then we can also vertically align the center. But that obviously doesn't work properly. That's because Illustrator is looking at any potential descenders. So what we need to do is drag this guy by its baseline down until it snaps into alignment with the bottom bar. And then I want you to drag it by the top of one of these letters until it more or less snaps into alignment with the top bar. And that's going too far, so I'm going to have to try again. I'll go ahead and zoom in here and drag this up like so. And I should see a dy value of about negative 45 points, which is what I'm looking for. So I'll go ahead and release. And now we need to split the difference by pressing the Enter key, and because the arrow tool is active. That brings up the Move dialog box. Make sure that Preview is turned on. Go ahead and make that vertical value positive, so get rid of the minus sign. And then after that value, enter /2, which is going to divide the value by 2. So it's going to move it back half as far, which ends up putting it exactly where we want it, at which point go ahead and click OK to accept that change. All right, now I want to combine these objects all together. And so the first thing I'm going to do is convert my text to path outlines. And you do that by first copying your text. So I'll press Control-C or Command-C on the Mac. And then you want to paste it in front by pressing Control-F or Command-F on the Mac. And then go ahead and twirl open your text layer right there and turn off the original text object. And that'll protect it from harm in case you have to come back to it. And then with the new one selected, go up to the Type tool and choose Create Outlines. Or you can press Control-Shift-O or Command-Shift-O on the Mac, and that converts the text to path outlines like so. Now I want you to shift-click on each one of the bars in order to select it. And I want to combine this thing into one object by grabbing my Shape Builder tool, and then press the Shift key and marquee everything like so in order to select it all. And that's actually going to create a problem for us. Notice that we lost the hole in the R. I don't want that, so I'm going to press Control-Z or Command-Z on the Mac to undo that move. And instead of using the Shape Builder, I'll just go up to the Object menu, choose Compound Path, and choose Make to turn everything into one big compound path like so. All right, now we want to give our text a little bit of an edge, so I'm going to zoom in on it. And I'm going to switch to the Appearance panel right here, and I'm going to click on a stroke, but first, I forgot, I need to switch back to the black arrow tool, or it will not affect the stroke at all. All right, now I'll grab that stroke. I'm going to leave it set to 1 point, and I'm going to change its color to this last guy here, C1M8Y32K5. And now I'm going to move the stroke below the fill. I'm going to click on the stroke to make it active, and I want to offset it by going up to the Effect menu, choosing Distort and Transform, and then choosing the Transform command. And I'm going to take the horizontal value down 1 in order to move that stroke to the left a little bit. And then I'll take the vertical move value up 1 like so to move it down. And then I'll click OK. Now the problem is that produces a little bit of a gap there. So I'm going to have to fill it in with another fill. So I'll go ahead and drop down to the second icon in the bottom left corner of the Appearance panel, which adds a new fill. And then I'll click on a color swatch for that fill and change it to that same bright color right there. And now I'm going to twirl the stroke open, and I want to basically apply this transform effect to the fill as well. So I'm going to click on it to select it. Then you want to press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac and drag it and drop it onto the new fill like so. And that'll go ahead and scoot that fill over and fill in the gaps. All right, now I'll just go ahead and zoom out here. And I'll click off the text to deselect it. And I'll switch back to my Layers panel. I'll make sure that text layer is active. And I'm just going to paste in some other text elements that I created in advance here. I'll go ahead and twirl that text layer closed, and then I'll turn off the guides layer. And that's the final Sheriff's Badge, complete with text that has been converted to path outlines here inside Illustrator. In this movie, I'll demonstrate 2 additional options that might otherwise leave you scratching your head. And they're both available inside of that Shape Builder dialog box. So I'll go ahead and select the tool, and then I'll press the Enter key, Turn key on the Mac. And they are these. First, we have gap detection up here at the top of the dialog box. And then we have what is possibly the most poorly named function inside the entire software, in merge mode, whatever that is. Clicking stroke splits the path. But it turns out they're both useful functions, so let me show you how they work. I'll go ahead and cancel out. And then I'll press Control N or Command N on the Mac to create a new document. It's going to have a width of 1,008 points and a height of 672 points, just like usual. Now I'll go ahead and click OK in order to create that new file. And I'll go ahead and grab my ellipse tool, and I'll just draw a circle someplace in this document like so. And I'll go ahead and fill it, let's say, with green. And now I'll press the V key to switch back to my black arrow tool. And I'm going to move this shape to right about there while I press the Alt key or the Option key on the Mac to create a duplicate of it. And then I'll press Control C, Control F, or Command C, Command F to make a copy of this shape. And I'll click on the word transform to bring up the transform panel. Make sure that the right point in the reference point matrix is selected. Then go to the flyout menu and choose flip horizontal in order to flip that shape like so. And now I'm just going to marquee both these shapes and drag them down. And what I want to do is create a slight gap between these three shapes like so. All right, so now let's say I go ahead and marquee all three shapes to select them. And I grab my shape builder tool and I press the Shift key so that I can marquee all three shapes. And that basically doesn't do anything. They're still independent shapes, as we can see by pressing the V key to switch back to the black arrow tool. And as you can see, I can drag them around just as much as I ever could. All right, so I'll press Control Z or Command Z on the Mac to undo that change. And then I'll just go ahead and marquee those shapes again, click on the Shape Builder tool, and this time I'll press the Enter key or the Return key on the Mac to bring up the Shape Builder tool options dialog box, and I'll turn on gap detection. And now you have the option of setting how big the gap is. And you can just fool around with that to see what works. But I'm going to set it to medium, or you can dial in your own custom value if you like. And then I'll go ahead and click OK. And now, if I once again shift marquee those shapes, I join them all together because Illustrator is filling in the gap. Now, it's not necessarily the most beautiful effect, as you can see right here, but it is possible, and it may be the kind of thing that you'll find useful at some point in time. All right, I'm going to zoom back out.
We'll call it good there for Deke for the night. But the amazing possibilities. What I find with Deke is it's best for me to have it on a second screen, watch for about 15 seconds, do what he did. Then once I've done with that, I go through it again and again. Yep. Okay, so let's spend the rest of the night working on superheroes.